We know hockey games move fast, but with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, you can score faster than anything happening on the ice. This week, new customers can bet $5 and get 200 instantly in bonus bets. And right now, we might be taking the Red Wings to lock up that second wild card position in the East. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app with code THPN. New customers bet just $5 on the NHL and get 200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPENY or text HOPENY 467369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-878-9777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. Copyright NHL 2024. All rights reserved. What's up, and welcome to another episode of the Grind Line Podcast. You're listening to episode 273. I'm your host, Greg. I'm here tonight with Tyler. We have a show tonight, a little shorter show. The playoffs are on. Not a lot of news out of Red Wings land since we sadly were eliminated from the playoffs. We have a little bit to cover tonight. Tyler, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Good to be back. Good to be on the podcast here. Just looking forward to getting into a little bit of this, talking a little bit of Worlds, talking about a little bit of DVY's press conference, and just looking forward to some summer stuff to talk about. There's not a whole lot, but there's a little bit here. So
Yeah, it's gonna get. I'm waiting. I'm like, well, maybe we should push the podcast back because maybe they'll sign some people. Maybe we'll get Raymond extension. Maybe we'll get a Seider extension. We haven't gotten them yet, so chances are, when I post this tomorrow, that they'll get signed literally 2 seconds later. A lot of people are saying they hope they got signed before possibly going to the Worlds themselves. And heard there's an insurance issue or something. And if they get that fixed, Yzerman said he's more than happy to send them. He thinks they should go play for their country, that it's a great experience. But I know as soon as I post this, they're going to sign contracts. And that's going to be a huge chunk of money.
yeah, similar to what the Detroit Lions did today with Penei Sewell and Amon St. Brown. So yeah, it would be interesting to see what happens, obviously, with Seider and Raymond's contracts. But they're RFAs, so I'm sure that will get done. It might take a little bit of time, but I don't see any issues with that, to be honest with you.
I was almost surprised that maybe he didn't extend Raymond like right when he was getting hot, because the problem with getting Raymond, and now I don't even think that a bridge is possible, because the problem with bridging Raymond is he gets even better and then the cost goes further up. But I assume each one of them will be locked to an 8-year deal because they're like, it's the foundation of your team. Larkin,
Raymond
Raymond,
8 times 8,
Seider.
I would imagine.
I think Raymond might come in lower. Wingers normally come in a little lower. I'm not sure he might get, I thought 7.75 for Raymond, 8 years, 7.75. I think Mo might get 8 to 8, between 8 to 8.5, because he's a number one defenseman. But I think wingers generally get a little less than centers, and Larkin is your top paid center right now.
And that'll end up being a bargain.
Yeah, it already is. I mean, Larkin
Both of them,
over,
honestly.
again, for the haters, Larkin was over a point per game this season. And if he would have finished with a full season and not gotten hurt, he probably would have had 40 goals. So there would have been your 40 goal point per game player in Dylan Larkin. But that's besides the point. What we're going to start the show with tonight, though, is there was an announcement of the 2024 U.S. men's national team. And there are two Detroit Red Wings. Dylan Larkin has made the Nationals team, and so is Alex Lyon. Larkin had said in his end of season press conference that he didn't know if he was going to go to Worlds or not, but it turns out he is. He had also said that he doesn't plan on going on vacation. He's going to train and get better. So that's Dylan Larkin for you, hockey fiend. But yeah, Lyon will be the goalie for the 2024 U.S. men's national team. And Dylan Larkin will be one of the forwards, along with Matt Boldy, Cole Caulfield, Joel Farabee, Johnny Gaudreau, Luke Kunin, Shane Pinto, Brady Tkachuk, and Trevor Zegras. Defense of Luke Hughes, Seth Jones, Jake Sanderson, Alex Vlasic, Zach Werenski. And then, yeah, your goalie's Alex Lyon. The team, that's a good team. Depending on what Canada looks like, you got some high-end talent there. Brady Tkachuk, as much as we hate him, he can score goals. Shane Pinto's a decent addition. Dylan Larkin's probably going to be your top line center. Cole Caulfield can score in bunches. Joel Farabee's been really good. Johnny Gaudreau, hot and cold. But when you get guys like Jake Sanderson and Luke Hughes on defense, you're putting together a pretty solid team, especially when you got, I mean, your defense is real strong, too, with Zach Werenski.
Surprised Jack Hughes didn't end up going, especially with his brother going.
Is he hurt?
I don't know. I know he was banged up a lot during the season. The other thing you have to remember about the world's teams as well is, a lot of the times some of the teams that are eliminated early in the Stanley Cup playoffs will send guys there. It's not a finished roster, in my opinion, yet.
Published April 9th, 2024. Devils to shut down Jack Hughes with superstar set to have
Yep,
shoulder surgery.
you're right. You're right. I knew there was something. I just wasn't sure exactly what it was.
Yeah, so Jack Hughes is having shoulder surgery. But to your point, yeah, guys can be added after the fact once they're eliminated from playoffs. And the tournament is May 10th through the 26th. So there's a little bit of time to be able to do that. But I mean, overall, it's to me looks like a solid team, right?
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. A lot of good American talent. Obviously, not like the super top end talent or the super top end, but definitely I would say like the B plus guys are on that team. And then in some cases like a Brady Kachuk and a Dylan Larkin, pretty high end guys. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I don't know if I would pick them to win based on just this roster. I'd have to see what Canada looks like, what Sweden looks like what Czechia looks like. Um, but yeah, on the peripheries, definitely looks like a pretty good roster.
Have we seen a Team Canada roster yet or no?
I have not seen a Team Canada roster yet. The one thing that I kind of wonder about is Alex Lyon played so much hockey this year. Why is he going to the Worlds to play more?
I mean, what's your better option as a US goal? Are you going to send John Gibson?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're right. I mean, and there's probably other guys that we're not really thinking about at the moment, but like I just as the Red Wings or even as Alex Lyon, you were kind of tired down the stretch. Now you're going to go play, X amount more games. I mean, it's probably not a bad thing at the end of the day, but it's just kind of a question I have just to play devil's advocate.
So your options right now for US born goalies are Jonathan Quick, which he's in the playoffs, Connor Hellebuck, which is still playing, John Gibson, Thatcher Demko, who is now hurt, was playing, Jake Ottinger, who's playing, Jack Campbell, Casey DeSmith, Ned. Ned would have been another option. Nedeljkovic is a US born player. Swayman's in the playoffs. Charlie Lindgren's in the playoffs. Anthony Stolarz, Cal Peterson, Alex Lyon, and then you got Phoenix Copley, Joey Decord, Caden Primo, Joseph Wool, Dustin Wolf, Devin Cooley, Hunter Shepard. You don't have many
Probably
good
Dustin Wolf's
options.
not going.
I mean, Dustin Wolf though is super duper young. This season, 303 goals against average, 896 save percentage. That to me doesn't scream please go to the Worlds. He had 8 wins and 7 losses. That's not. I mean,
Played in the AHL a lot this year too, I think,
I'm
for
starting Lyon
Calgary.
over him all day though.
Oh, I'm not saying start him. I'm just saying I'm surprised he's not on the roster yet.
Yeah, there are no backup goalies listed currently. So I think you probably what they may be waiting for is maybe one of these teams to be eliminated from playoffs to get another goalie, and then Lyon is the backup. But it's good to see 2 Red Wings, regardless, making the U.S. national team. And I assume that when the other rosters come out, you'll have Mo on Germany, you'll have Lucas Raymond on Sweden, and you might see a couple other guys join as well.
Yeah, as long as there's no injuries and nobody's banged up, I don't see why you wouldn't want to go. Unless you're like Jack Hughes, where you physically cannot go. I don't see why you wouldn't. I mean, obviously there's an injury risk, but there's an injury risk going out and playing shinny on the local rink down the street from you, training in the summertime. So
There's an injury risk walking around Whole Foods to grocery shop.
exactly, yeah. So I mean, if there's an opportunity to get better and play a lot of hockey, then why not? Then the other person on this that kind of sticks out is Shane Pinto. He was suspended for the gambling thing early in the season and didn't play a whole lot of hockey. So for him to go back out there and play more hockey, I mean, that's good for him. But yeah, I mean, overall, this Team USA looks pretty solid. Obviously, can't really tell you who I would pick. until I see the other rosters. But so far, so good. I mean, it just goes to show you even the B and C plus guys for Team USA, you know, give them a really damn good chance to win, and that just shows how far USA hockey has come.
We'll be able to talk probably a little bit more about it next week when inevitably the other rosters are released, because it looks like the US is the first one to do it. And normally once one drops their schedule or their roster, in the next few days following, the rest of the teams start dropping theirs as well. So we'll be able to follow up on it next week, get a really good look at them, and then kind of gauge our chances from there. But what the meat of our episode is tonight is we had a Derek Lalonde press conference, which was okay, and he kind of threw some bombs at Yzerman, maybe a little bit jokingly. But then we had the Steve Yzerman press conference, and this is the one that we were a little bit more interested in, because when you end tied for the last wild card spot, and then you look at this off season, you want to get kind of a look into the mind of the steel trap that is Steve Yzerman, to see maybe a glimpse of where he's going to take this team going forward. Because me and Ryan left last episode saying this offseason is the most important offseason of the rebuild. He agrees, kind of. But I think I'm just going to go, maybe I might leave some out, but I'm going to go over some of the stronger points. So Yzerman started off the whole thing by saying that it was an exciting season, but a bit of a roller coaster. But overall, there was progress, and we saw the progress. And anyone that didn't see the progress, come on. Like, who are you kidding? We improved in points, we improved in goals per game, we improved in goals against. Every aspect of the game, there was improvement. And I know there were people that went in and said at the point where we were winning that it was playoffs or bust, and then they went on that skid, and then they said, well, you went on that skid and you missed the playoffs, the season's a failure. And I think that's way, way, way too black and white. Me and Ryan talked about this too. And we didn't get to get your opinion on it, but as the season as a whole, would you, if you look at the entirety of it, consider it a success or a failure?
I think any season, when you're at the point that the Red Wings are at, did you have more points than last year? Is one question that I ask, and yes, you did. Did you have development that more than you had last year? Yes, you did. See Larkin, see Raymond, see Seider. DeBrincat had a pretty good year. So yes, it's a success. Is it disappointing? But okay, so it's a success. But at the same time, I will say, is it disappointing to not make the playoffs in the fashion that they did for a lot of self-inflicted wounds? Yes, it is. It's very disappointing. And the fact that there there weren't any additions to help this team out at first, I was like, oh, this is bullshit. This is ridiculous. But if Steve Yzerman doesn't see this team where I see this team, Steve Yzerman's paid to do this. I'm not paid to do this. So if Steve Yzerman thinks something, then you have to go with it because he's the man in charge and he's been doing this a long time and he built a cup contender in Tampa. Did he get help along the way with inheriting Stamkos and Hedman? Yes. But he also drafted and developed very well and then signed key free agents when he needed to. So, again, is it a failure? No, but I can understand why people might think it that way. You know, if your expectation was for the team to make the playoffs, well, then they were a disappointment. If you were in the camp that we were in that said, all right, let's play important games in March and April and see where the cards fall. Well, the cards didn't fall your way, unfortunately, right? And the reason that the cards didn't fall your way is you had a chance to head to head beat Washington and head to head beat Pittsburgh, and you didn't do it. And then at the end of the day, the chips fell, and it came down to something that you can't even make up
It came
with
down to
Tortorella holding the
regulation
goal.
wins.
So whatever, it is what it is. They didn't make it. I think they would have put up a better fight than Washington is, to be
Oh,
frank.
absolutely.
But that Washington
Washington's
team
rolling over.
does not deserve to be there. You got the coach calling out Alexander Ovechkin. It's not a good situation there. And you know, I don't care if they made the playoffs. Them making the playoffs is like what the Red Wings were in 2016, the last time they were in the playoffs, where they really didn't belong there, but they backed in because Boston lost to Ottawa and Detroit got in with 1 point against the Rangers, and then they ended up playing Tampa, who is a much better team, and you only won one game. So, not to bring you back too far in the past, but that's kind of where we're at this point. We're not Washington where we have to back in and have no chance. If we get in any progress, winning one, winning two games is a monumental accomplishment for this group because they've never done it before outside of Dylan Larkin. Actually, no, Dylan Larkin's never won a playoff series either. So there's few guys on this team that have. Obviously, Patrick Kane has and stuff like that. But there's a lot of those guys on that team that don't know what it takes to win in the postseason. And you know what? The only way you get that is to get your ass kicked in round one and come back the next year and say, you know what? Now I've tasted it. Now I can ramp up the energy to get, because you see these playoffs. The people that say that physicality in hockey is dying, no, it's not. Look at this Toronto
Yeah, this
Boston
Boston
series.
game's like a roller derby. They're like destroying each other out there.
But again, then it's not even just this series. I'm not saying every player does it, but I saw, you see Austin Matthews going in the corner and hitting people. It's like, whoa, what is going on here? But the intensity is ratcheted up so much. Could they have competed? Maybe. Would they have beaten the Rangers? Probably not. But again, you don't know because the Wings power play is really good, and you probably would have some opportunities. Regardless of the situation, they didn't get in. And to answer your question, it's not a failure of a season, but I can see depending on what your expectation for the season was, if it's a failure or if it's a success.
So Yzerman says that after 5 seasons, he is somewhat pleased with the progress. It's not perfect, but he's pleased with the development of the organization and development of the young guys in Detroit and Grand Rapids, which is part of the plan. Did we see development? Yes. And he's happy with the development. He says, as a staff, they need to make better roster decisions, whether that's with younger players or doing something with contracts. Expectations are raised for individuals, and for the team, they will probably have to get more than 91 to get in, which will be a challenge. So next season, if you think there's going to be an improvement, I don't think that Ottawa and Buffalo and Montreal can get worse. They're going to get better. So if I'm looking at next season and I see, 91 got in this season, but that was with way underperforming expectations from a few teams in the conference. And it doesn't look like Tampa's going anywhere. And it sure as hell doesn't look like Boston or Florida or Toronto are going anywhere.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens with Boston in this playoff series. I've heard a couple of people say that if Boston does falter in the first round this year, there might be heads rolling there. So in terms of Don
Maybe,
Sweeney, in terms of Jim Montgomery
but
trades, who knows?
even then, when you look at it, and Boston scores, nice to tie the game. But when you look at it as a whole and you look at the other teams, you're thinking, well, maybe next season you might need 96 points to get in. You might need 98 points to get in as a wild card. And it's only going to get, I think, harder. So unless you get that development and that consistent development and make changes, it would have been great to see some defensive changes during that 7-game losing streak to get in. And Yzerman seems to think that that's going to happen because it's just the natural progression of coaching and it's the natural progression of player development. But on the other hand, he doesn't see anything dramatic happening this offseason when he was asked about signings. He said he's looking at younger players that didn't finish in Detroit where there's potential. Waivers, people that would be eligible for waivers would be Berggren and Johansson, but they won't rule anyone else out either in making the team because of waivers. So the logic there is that, Berggren and Johansson have to go through waivers and they probably wouldn't pass. So chances are they probably make the team next season based on that alone. But he said he's also not going to rule anyone else out, meaning that if Kasper shows out, then Kasper's on the team. If Mazur shows out, then Mazur's on the team.
Kasper should be on the team.
But it also means he can't make any huge changes by bringing in unless he brings in one or two big free agents, by filling the roster like he did this last season, because he does have guys. Well, he does have guys that need to make the team. And like we talked about it a little bit, is that Stammer, I think, is the guy I would take a look at. Even though he's playing wing mostly right now, he doesn't really play much center anymore. I think that, again, it solidifies your top six, especially if someone like Patrick Kane doesn't resign. So I think that changes do need to be made. And we had said this is one of the bigger off seasons in the entire rebuild. But Yzerman is saying he doesn't expect anything dramatic to happen. So is that just tempering
He
expectations?
said that last year, and then
Or is
they
that
traded for
or is
Alex
that purposely
DeBrincat.
lying to us?
If there's one thing that I've learned, just covering this team the way we do, or listening to podcasts like 32 Thoughts or Spittin' Chicklets or any other hockey podcast, the Jeff Merrick Show, all those shows, you're not going to get much out of Steve Yzerman. So regardless of the situation, I take everything he says, especially when it comes to adding or subtracting to the roster, with a grain of salt, because you really just don't know. I mean, he's saying that, but he always leaves the door open. If an opportunity presents itself, then he's gonna look at it, and that is true. The DeBrincat situation last year, no one really knew if that was gonna come to fruition. People speculated, and that was one of those situations where like everyone speculated, and that was one of those rare occasions where the speculation worked and everyone got to see how good Alex DeBrincat is of a hockey player. Did he have a great year? Not a great year, but not a bad year. He can certainly be better than the way he was. He needs to go have a stretch where he's not going 10 games without a goal. Or you know what I
20
mean?
games or 19
20
games or
goals or
something.
whatever it was without a goal. Like he's got to cut that out. But at the same time, when you talk about the Red Wings, they need to cut out the streaks of losing 7 games in a row and 8 games in a row. And that's where they missed the playoffs, really. That's me and Ryan had text conversations, and we did in the group chat as well. That's where they missed the playoffs. It wasn't on the last night of the season. They did what they had to do.
This offseason, Alex DeBrincat needs to just fire a million pucks into the net every day
Yep.
to be able to actually hit the net and get it in instead of shooting them wide. But there was something that Yzerman, and then now this again goes back to your grain of salt comment. Yzerman was asked about the decor and how will the team improve on goals against. He says there are 7 under contract, including Simon. The decor will probably, for the most part, be intact, he said, meaning not a lot of movement. And if we come back in the next season with Holl and Petry on this team, I will scream, because throughout this whole interview and this whole press conference, he kept bringing up the point is we need to keep pucks out of the net. We need to be better defensively. We need to tighten up defense and allow less goals. And that's partially on the goaltender, but it also comes with team defense. And to say all that and then say that the decor is going to be mostly intact, unless by decor he meant Edvinsson, Walman, Seider, that's my decor. Those are 3 guys. You really need, and then Johansson, mentioned Johansson too. You really need to add a top 4 defenseman, and you need to replace one of your bottom guys. That's what you need to do. So that message the messaging was kind of scary. Well, Pesci was one of my options, but that messaging to me is kind of scary, because to say you need to do all this defensive work and then you say, but the defense is probably going to be mostly the same going into next year. He says it's on the coaching staff to continue to work and improve on players and adapting the system, but it's scary to think that you could come back with a very similar defensive group next season and then just repeat what you did.
Yeah, I don't think they're coming back with the same decor. I think that's a lot of tongue in cheek. I think, again, like I said, you take a lot of what Steve says with a grain of salt, and you just go with it that way, because I feel like he can't seriously look at himself in the mirror and say, "Yeah, that defense was horrible, and let's run it back," and hope that the coaching staff. I
Another
mean,
one.
obviously, the Wallman and the Seiders and the Edvinssons, they're getting better. But who else on the decor is like Shayne Gostisbehere is as good as he's going to be, right? Justin
Yeah.
Holl's as good as he's going to be.
Which is warming the bench apparently.
Yeah, which is warming the bench. Ben Sherratt is probably played his best season that he's ever played, other than maybe the season when he was with Florida and got traded to Montreal for a first round pick. Like a lot of those guys that are already there, other than the aforementioned 3, those guys are as good as they're going to get. They're not getting any better. In fact, they might get worse. Jeff Petry,
No, they will get worse.
They will get worse with age and everything else. So you need to find yourself I don't know if it's a Patrick Kane like defenseman, and I don't mean that like in a Patrick Kane, but like maybe a Brett Pesce would be a good situation. I don't know exactly who else would be out there. I haven't looked just yet. That's how how early we are in the off season still. But I mean that I don't know if it's a 30-year-old or even young. Obviously, younger would be better, but then you're paying premium on that. You're trading your Johanssons, you're trading your Wallinders, maybe you're trading first round picks. And Steve Yzerman has said that he's not really in the market to trade first round picks. So if he's not going to trade first round picks, then you're going to have to either, you know, hope someone falls in love with one of your prospects, or you're gonna have to pay out of the nose for it for like a Brett Pesce. So I don't know. I mean, your guess is as good as mine what they're gonna do, but they're not gonna run it back. I can't see that happening. They're not running that defense back.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe you could get a guy that's on his way out, like a Brent Burns, but then I just looked. Did you know Brent Burns is 38 years old?
Yeah, but wouldn't he solidify your top four?
I don't
He's
at
still a
38, I
mammoth of
don't
a
know.
man. Like
I,
that's what I mean when I talk about like a Patrick Kane kind of defenseman, like an older guy still has like Brian Rafalski when he came over to Detroit in 2008. He wasn't the Brian Rafalski of old, but he was still a damn good defenseman. Obviously, that was a different situation. That was like the missing piece to winning the 2008 Stanley Cup and then getting there in '09. I don't know if that's the kind of defenseman you need, or if you're going to try and say, well, let's see Calgary. Can we get, is it Leah Sanderson? No, what is Rasmus Anderson? Could
Rasmus
you,
Anderson would be
could you,
Calgary.
yeah, could you get a Rasmus Anderson from Calgary? That you're going to pay a lot for it,
Yeah.
but that would solidify your D, and that's a righty and all that. So I don't know. That your guess is as good as mine, but they're not running that defense back. I don't see that.
Well, if you're looking at free agents, Tyler Myers, he's 34. He's coming off a $6 million contract in Vancouver. You can look at someone like Brady Shea. He's 30 years old, coming out of Carolina at a $5.25 million contract. Nikita Zaitsev's 32, coming out of Chicago at a 4.5 million. Tyson Berry coming out of Nashville at 32 years old. Um, I mean, I think Brett Pesce, he's younger than Brady Shea, and I think that Carolina will keep one of either Pesce or Shea on their roster.
Yeah,
And
I
then
like Brady Shea a lot. I think Brady Shea is a damn good defenseman. I don't know what the metrics say, but I think that guy is pretty decent offensively. I think he's a better version of Shayne Gostisbehere, except he's better defensively. Like if you can take Shayne Gostisbehere, boom, Brady Shea in. I like that trade off, and that probably solidifies your top four too.
I think your other two options are, do you take someone like a Brandon Montour from Florida or a Matt Roy from LA? Not only do you need a top four defenseman, if you can get a top four defenseman who can add some snarl to the game, it's only going to help. And I think, again, Brett Pesce's a big dude, and he's a dude that could help quite a bit. So there's options out there. And it's actually a pretty good free agent class when you look across everything from forwards, besides goalies, from forwards and defensemen. It's a pretty good free agent class. Now, there will be signings that happen in the offseason, but there's absolutely top four talent out there that I think could be had, as well as adding Albert Johansson. And maybe he becomes a top four defenseman because he played with Simon Edvinsson, and it would more than likely be Simon Edvinsson's partner in Detroit.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Obviously, we think Johansson is a future top four NHL defenseman. I almost said NFL. NHL defenseman, and you need to see it at some point, right? Is it perfect to have him play with Edvinsson, someone that he's played with already? Yes, but I'll say another thing. Edvinsson still has a lot of his own problems too that he needs to take care of. So in a perfect world, you'd have Edvinsson and Seider, because Seider's still learning, but Seider is obviously way ahead of where Edvinsson is. And then you would have Johansson with somebody else. Would it be
Jake Wallman.
Jake Wallman and Johansson?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Which is actually a great pair because Wallman's an offensive defenseman who can play good defense. and Albert Johansson's your shutdown guy.
That's a pretty good top four considering some of the top fours that we've had in the last, 7 years since the last playoff run.
On Albert Johansson, Yzerman says he's not just going to be handed a contract. He's really pleased with his development this year. Offseason will be important, but they're still fighting. They were fighting for second place. The Griffins did lock up home ice advantage, and we're actually giving away Griffins tickets. Friday will be the draw for that, so you can go over to our Twitter and enter for a chance to win Griffins tickets if you are out in Grand Rapids. But Yzerman is confident that Albert Johansson, and he said this, confident that he will show enough to be in Detroit in the fall. And if that's how much Yzerman, how much stock he puts into his prospects, and that's what's built. He's built the second best prospect pool in the entire NHL. And those are the kind of guys where you say, yeah, bring them in. I am confident they're going to show enough that they could probably play in the top 4 on our defense next season. On to Lalone. Lalone says he was asking to bring in youth. And then Steve said they were not coming up under any circumstances this year. They needed to develop, didn't need guys constantly going back and forth. Doesn't remember telling Lalone to pump the brakes. Derek Lalone had said that he had remembered asking Stevie in the middle of the season, like about calling some of the younger guys up, and that Yzerman pushed back and told him no, like he needed to pump the brakes on it. And Steve says he doesn't remember that conversation, but he said there were guys that were never going to come up because he says it's frustrating for them to come up, play 4 minutes, and then be sent back down. It's better for them to get consistent play in a big role night in and night out than being shuffled and having the travel time and sitting on the bench for most of it. That 15 minutes of AHL game is far more valuable than 4 minutes of NHL game.
Yeah, I agree 100%. The young guys and having them doing the yo-yo thing where they come up and go back down, that's more of a thing for, guys that I don't want to say you don't do that to top prospects. That's how you ruin top prospects. When a top prospect comes up, they're up for good as long as they're playing well. If they're not playing well, then obviously you can have the conversation of, you know what, if you're not playing well, you're not going to play a whole lot here, so we're going to send you back down so you get more ice time in an easier environment or a more learner friendly environment. You don't want to be learning at the NHL level. That's not a recipe for success in a lot of cases.
No, we saw that happen to Michael Rasmussen.
Right. In some cases it's fine, and in a lot of cases it's not. So um it's a case by case basis. Some guys are a lot more mature and a lot bigger and a lot stronger than others, and others are younger and more raw and require a lot more development time. So it really depends on the player. But I agree with Steve 100% there. Um I'll push back just a little bit. I thought Johansson, or not Johansson, I thought Edvinsson was ready.
Probably January.
Probably January. Yeah, and he should have been called up. I'm not sure why he wasn't, but I guess it's the Steve Yzerman slow burn, which is not a bad thing. Because you saw when Edvinsson came up, he was a lot better than he was last year. And at any point he was in Grand Rapids. So I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, he wears the number 77. So you're just making that comparison because he's wearing that number. But I'll tell you what, the way he skates, the way he's like kind of lanky, but also kind of big at the same time, it reminds me a lot of Victor Hedman, like even more so than Mo Seider does. I don't know who Mo Seider reminds me of, but Victor Hedman and Simon Edvinsson have very similar skating styles and just kind of like the pace that they play the game at. Like they can speed it up if they need to, but they can also slow it back down. And I've always heard, and I'm sure you've heard this as well, the best players of all time, can slow the game down to their own pace. Pavel Datsyuk is a perfect example. Obviously, defenseman wise, Nick Lidstrom was another perfect example about that. So
Yeah, Edvinsson is like what you said. He's really good at like using the reach and using his control to just stop play. And we saw that happen several times where he will take it and he'll just basically calm it down so everyone else can move around and get adjusted while he keeps control and keeps guys out of the way. I think Victor Hedman was his draft comparable. to basically a career wise, the trajectory of a Hedman, which would be fantastic because that's what we need. But another guy that a lot of people are excited about that is, again, a pump the brakes moment. Steve says that Axel Sandin Palika is expected to stay in Sweden for another season, that he's fun to watch, skates well, and moves the puck well, just needs more time to develop, get bigger and stronger. He says they haven't had the conversation about what he wants to do yet, and he hasn't asked to come over to the AHL or anything, but that his belief is that he'll be in Sweden, which is okay. I mean, it's a great development league. It's probably the third best team in the world, or the third best league in the world, second or third.
Yeah, I agree. Would I like to see what it looks like in preseason? Yes. But
Oh,
I
and I
mean,
think you probably will.
yeah, okay, so that's fine. Yeah, I would like to see what it looks like in preseason, and then see him in some preseason games, see him in camp early, and then if he's not ready, then he gets sent back to Sweden. If not, then he can play with the Griffins for a little while. I don't see any harm in bringing him over and getting him used to the new and the North American style ice. I don't see any harm in that. But if Steve thinks that it's in his best interest to stay in Sweden for one more year, then hey, that's what he'll do. Nate Danielson is the guy that I would say if he doesn't make the team, there's not major problems, but I feel like he should be able to push to make the team in the fall.
Oh, I think he was pushing to make the team this preseason, and
He
I
definitely
think that.
was. And I think maybe Steve Yzerman said, you know what, let's pump the brakes on this.
Well, I think what it came down to is that I'm sure he could have come out the gate and been hot, but an 82 game season against men is hard, especially for a kid who was just drafted. Now, he can go to the AHL. So Steve could work him, and if he doesn't work, send him down, bring next guy up. And there's no risk there because then he's going to the AHL and playing in a men's league instead of having to send him back to juniors. It was, again, it's the Michael Rasmussen situation. Couldn't play in Grand Rapids because he didn't finish out the CHL agreement. Now that's done. I think that he absolutely makes a push. I think it'll be down to him and Marco Kasper to see who makes it at that center position. If you can solidify a 2C, if you don't go out and sign one, and you can say, man, Nate Danielson comes in preseason, he's blowing the doors down, he's scoring, he's being great defensively, full 200-foot game, high energy, high IQ, and you can play JT Compher as your 3C, how good of a 3C would JT Compher be? Like, it's perfect. I think the perfect position for him is 3C or second line winger.
Guess what? That's where he was on the Colorado team when they just won the Stanley
Yeah.
Cup in 2021 or 2022.
Yep.
So that's the kind of depth that you would have if you could have one of these guys emerge and become that number 2 center that you've coveted for, since Dylan Larkin's been the number 1 center, which is, ever since Zetterberg retired in what was that, 2018, 2019, whatever it was. Like I feel like I don't know if that's the missing piece. There's a couple missing pieces, but if you look at long term, the missing piece that you still don't have, it's that number 2 center. If it's Kasper, great. If it's Danielson, great. I don't care which one it is, but the fact that you have 2 possibilities is way farther ahead than you've been in the last. I can't even tell you how many years at this point. You're way farther ahead than you were along, when you started this rebuild. And I know that's cliche, but you started to develop depth on defense. You have a lot of prospects defensively, which is a great thing to have because when you do need to trade, like say Danielson and say Kasper don't work out and they're not the guys that you thought. Maybe they're like a Michael Rasmussen where they're a pretty good player, but they're not a
They're not
impact
completing
player.
your roster.
They're not an impact player. When you try to trade somebody, you can trade from your depth, which is your defensive prospect depth, which is what they've developed. And you talk about right-handed defensemen. They don't have a glut of those, but they do have young defensemen, and those are still coveted in the NHL. So there's a lot of things to be proud of if you're the Red Wings. I mean, obviously, it's hard to not make the playoffs. It's hard to be that close, but And it's also hard to hear people like Greg Wyshynski and other people saying, "Oh, well, they don't have the superstars. They don't have this. They don't have that." Let's pump the brakes on that because Lucas Raymond could still be
Let's
a
see what
superstar.
we have. Like,
Let's see what we have. Let's see what those guys become. And then, at the end of the day, if they're not superstars, well then, hey, you look and you try to make a trade, or you look and you try and sign a free agent. The days of tanking are over, unfortunately, and you got what you got.
as the kids say, let him cook. Yzerman says in his time here, he's been conservative in bringing in young guys, wants them to finish juniors and then the AHL. Doesn't know if there's a perfect way to develop a player. If they are ready to help the team win games and have offense without sacrificing defense, then so be it. They aren't keeping guys down if they're good enough to play. That was his big point. If they can play and they can help the team, they'll be on the team. You saw that happen with Berggren. They brought Berggren in. He had a couple really bad lapses that led to a goal. He was benched and then sent back down before he was waiver eligible. They have to be ready to be inconsistently and play consistently in order to get that spot. And everyone saw it, but I mean, people were mad like, why is he playing over Christian Fischer and why is he playing over David Perron? It's because those are different roles. You're not, you don't compare a Berggren to a Perron. You want Berggren to be a middle six guy with high hockey IQ who can be kind of defensively responsible, but who can be consistently offensively good. And you're
You want
not
him
putting
to
him,
be a younger, better version of Robbie Fabry.
sure, but you're not expecting him to be David Perron, who's out there to protect pucks and go into the corners and hit people. You're not expecting that of Berggren. You're not expecting him to be a PK specialist and to go out there and be a grinder every night and play 8 minutes like Christian Fischer. You're not doing that. Their guys fit certain molds. And the way teams are going to try and play Berggren is an offensive, like I said, offensive mid six guy with hockey IQ, high hockey IQ probably. But when you're being played on the second line and you have defensive lapses like that, your matchups are going to take advantage of that. And that is why he was sat and that is why he was sent back down. A few more things. Says Lucas Raymond showed his game breaking ability this season. His performance down the stretch is what he expects from him. He goes hard to the net and is not stopping. He's improved in confidence and is a fabulous, talented player with great hockey sense, courage, and determination. On the contracts for Seider and Raymond, they're looking at long term extensions for the younger guys around the league. How many are proving value? So he's like, we're going to look at other guys who are getting the same kind of 8-year, whatever $1 million contracts and how are those panning out for those guys? Is it worth it when they're doing it? He said dollars and term have to work for both parties. It can be dangerous if you're paying a premium for potential, like kind of like what Ken Holland used to do with guys like Franz Nielsen and Justin Abdelkader. Is well, maybe they can do this, so we're going to give them huge contracts and hope that they do it, and then they fall on their face. Not great. He said those deals can cause cap issues, but he's open for long term deals, but the value of them has to work. That they're going to figure something out. They know the range they're looking at, and that they have to pay a premium for what would be considered the UFA years. So you look at how much you would pay them if they were an RFA for the RFA years and then the UFA years, and you kind of do some math there to figure out a total contract value. Why Steve gets paid to do this? Not me, because I just be like, give him whatever, back up the truck, man. What Raymond did down the stretch, just dump all the money on his lawn. Who cares about the cap?
No, I think the long term play for both of them is oh, Boston scored.
Good.
No, not good because I have to deal with that in there. So long contracts are fine as long as the value is good for everybody. I mean, obviously you're gonna have duds. The end of a contract sometimes isn't gonna be as good as the beginning of it. When you talk about like a Seider or Raymond, obviously your first contract is or your second contract, which could be the long-term deal, could turn into something where, oh my God, we're paying him even more after this one. But hey, that's the reality of where you're at. The cap's gonna go up. So if you can get Seider on an 8x8.5 or 8x9 or something like that, then hey, that's a win, in my opinion. With the cap going up and everything. And then Raymond, what'd you say? 8x6.5, 8x7?
8 times 7. I had him around 7.75, 7.5 to 7.75.
Yeah, that's a win. That the both of those would be wins. And then you talk about the UFAs. I'm not giving Steven Stamkos a 5-year deal.
No, I'd give him 3.
I'd
But
give
then
him 3.
at that point, give Patrick Kane 3.
Yeah. Do you give them both 3? I mean, no, probably not, right? I mean, because that tanks the overall age of your team.
No, I don't think. My thing is Steven Stamkos is 34, right? I'm thinking Stammer's going to want a 5-year deal. He's like, this is going to be, I think he's in a bank on, this is my last contract I'm going to sign. And it's a 5-year deal or whatever. I think Patrick Kane shouldn't expect any more than 3 years out of anybody.
So I guess the
And
good thing about the Stamkos potential, and I know I said this on here when he became a UFA the first time, and people thought he was going to leave Tampa for Detroit or Boston or one of those places, was, he's from Toronto. He's he's from Ontario, right up the 401 from Detroit. So if he doesn't want to go play for the Maple Leafs or can't go play for the Maple Leafs,
he
the
can't.
next closest team would be the Detroit Red Wings. He's not going to go play for Buffalo. So I, there's a possibility. I don't know what that number is. I guess it just depends. It doesn't sound like Tampa's going to bring Stamkos back. So that is, and obviously it depends on what happens in the playoffs and stuff like that. But I think Julien Brisebois has kind of had that ship sail, unless they're going to do what Detroit did with Nick Lidstrom at the end, where they're just giving him a 1-year deal. I don't know that he's going to go for that, but if he does, then obviously he's not an option. But I'm not giving him a 5-year deal. I'll give him a 4-year deal, give him a 3-year deal. I'm fine with that. But then you're right. Why not just give Patrick Kane a 3 or 4-year deal? And Patrick Kane wants to be here. He's good friends with DeBrincat. The reason why. He's already played in your system, so he knows how to play with Raymond, Larkin, Seider, Edvinsson to a point. Like, he knows how to play with these guys, the David Perrons of the world. So, I mean, why wouldn't you bring him back? That's my point. And for a lot of people saying, "Oh, well, that post on Twitter and all that means that he's not coming back," I don't believe that at all.
So on Patrick Kane, Steve says that they have 6 UFAs and have expressed interest in bringing them back, but it's a puzzle. Has to sign some RFAs that will have a significant impact on the cap. They're getting close to being a cap team and will have to start making decisions. As Patrick is a wizard with the puck and and the calmness is fantastic. Brought a lot of swagger to the team with a very under the radar personality. He said they would both consider a reunion. And then Patrick Kane tweeted today, "Thank you, Red Wings, my teammates, coaches, and all the fans of Hockeytown for welcoming me and my family with open arms this season. This past year gave us memories we'll never forget. The work doesn't stop." So there is a couple things that I took. So part of it, I think, is media training, where once the season's over, you use a lot of past tense words to describe the season, like this team or that team or the team or they, using a lot of those that not just Patrick Kane used, other players use them too, because this team is over. Their season is over. This team is done. Next year is a different team.
You can just say
And
this organization.
yeah, but I think that a lot of it is kind of being overblown. Patrick Kane has made it known that he wants something with more term on it. He has said at every turn that he would the Red Wings would absolutely be one of his choices. Alex DeBrincat was asked a couple times and he seemed to laugh through it like he knew something we didn't know when he posted his thank you message on Instagram. It was a picture of him and Patrick Kane on the ice. I think the only thing that would stop Patrick Kane from coming back is if Yzerman wouldn't give him a 3-year deal. And the way that I look at it is give him a 3-year deal. And if he gets injured, LTIR him and there's your money. Like, I think that it's low enough risk that he can produce when his hip is working. He says he's going to do a full athletic off season this season that he wasn't able to do because it was all hip rehab last season. And that I don't think there's really, knowing what we know now and seeing what we have seen, I don't think there's any risk there. And for Yzerman to say, no, I don't want to give you 3 years, knowing that it's either production like this or broken hip LTIR, I can't see him not doing it unless he has other things in mind.
I agree 100%. I there's not really a whole lot of downside in it. He can teach your young guys how to win. He's obviously won at the highest of levels, um, with that fucking piece of shit organization. But, there's no discounting. He won at a very high level, at a very high level. So, how is Toronto not scoring? What is happening right here? But, he's won at a very high level, probably the
Insane
highest of
stop by Swayman.
the highest of high levels. And he can teach your young guys, he can teach your prospects, he can teach, every American prospect that you have and every other prospect that you have how to play the game of hockey and how to be a professional. Obviously, he can't teach you how to be Patrick Kane because
No.
those are God-given hands, that's God-given talent, but there is a work ethic that I feel like Patrick Kane doesn't get a lot of credit for. He works extremely hard. He really does. Is he the biggest guy in the world? No, but he never has been. But he definitely works hard. He definitely tries to back check. And I have a lot of time for Patrick Kane. Probably not something I would have said, a year ago today. But here we are, and I think they do bring him back. If a gun to my head, I think they do bring him back.
And I think that's the value that you're talking about is like Lucas Raymond had said that he learned a lot from Patrick Kane this season. And that's what you want. If you can develop Lucas Raymond into Patrick Kane, like the Swedish Patrick Kane on ice, that's what you want your forwards to learn from. And I think even if he does slow down, like he was at like a point, almost a point per game pace in the games that he did play. And even if he slows down to 0.75 points per game or a half a point per game and you're playing him on the third line, the intangibles, the off ice and on ice just learning is where the value is going to be there. So if you could get him at a 3-year deal at $4 million a season, I don't see how you say no.
Yeah, I'm in.
So the way we're going to end it tonight is Yzerman was asked if playoffs are the expectation next year. He said, I hope so. It's going to be a challenge. The management group needs to make some good decisions, and the answer to whether those decisions were good happens after the season. One or two younger guys could add a boost, tighten up defensively, and it's better. Basically saying that there's a lot of decisions to make in the offseason. Do they want to make the playoffs? Yes. He talked a little bit about Cossa. He's not going to say he's ready, put a timeline on him because that's unfair to him, but he's been really good. The way they're going to end it, I think, is just if you're looking at this now and you're looking at offseason possibilities and what needs to happen, are you with what you've seen so far? What is your confidence level that next year they make the playoffs?
Oh, I think if next year they don't make the playoffs, there's a lot of changes. There's a lot of changes, and Yzerman starts to feel the heat, I think. Not saying that
Really?
he's gonna get fired or anything like that, but this would be
So you
what
don't
this
expect prospects to come in and then some regression to happen.
No, I mean, I guess it depends on what happens. If it's just an internal, everyone comes up, we re-sign Patrick Kane, we go from there. The expectation is to make the playoffs, in my opinion. I think that it's been long enough. You need to take that step forward to make the playoffs. If that Washington team can get in, then you can get in. There's no
Yeah.
excuse why you can't get in. And I'll
Same
tell
with
you
the
another thing.
Islanders.
In the Islanders, I mean, they came out of nowhere and started playing good, and even they really didn't even play that good. Just Philadelphia kind of fell flat on their face. So
The Tortorella effect.
yeah, I would say the playoffs is the expectation next year. I really, I'm not saying that you need to go deep in the playoffs or anything like that, but you should make the playoffs next year. It's going to take some work. Teams like Boston are probably going to get a little worse, but we've been saying that for the last 5 years and it still hasn't happened.
Yeah, look
Montreal and
what's happening
Buffalo and
now. Like,
Montreal, Buffalo, and Ottawa will probably get a little bit better. Florida will get a little bit worse. Tampa will probably get a little bit worse. So it'll start coming back to the mean, but then it comes down to can you stay out of your 7-game losing streaks, 8-game losing streaks, really bad months. Like you need to get points even when you're not playing good. That's really what it comes down to. That's why they missed the playoffs this year. And next year, the expectation, I would say, is to make the playoffs. Otherwise, there's going to be significant roster changeover, I think.
I would say that playoffs that we would be expected last season, I think I said within the next 2 seasons, we're going to be expected to make playoffs. And I think we're right on schedule for that. And Steve's not dumb. He's done this for a very long time. We said it, he'll say what he's going to say, and then he'll go out and do the absolute opposite because he loves to kind of troll the media a little bit. And he's not going to give away his secrets. Why would he do that? So I expect a couple moves, maybe one big move. I expect some re signings. But the thing that he did say that was really important was that the coaching staff has gotten a good feeling in the locker room. The guys have started playing for each other and playing for the team instead of playing for themselves. And
Have
that
they?
but that they've figured out while they were winning and they were getting good in the standings that you need to keep pushing like that. And Larkin even said the same thing. He said it's a great group of guys. This year we had a ton of fun. And it's the thing is that last year, I don't think they were having fun. And in the past, they weren't really having fun. But then you bring in some of these energy guys, and not even just like energy on the ice, but like a Christian Fischer, who I think is a great locker room guy, who's just like a rah-rah cheerleader type dude. You bring in a David Perron, who is just out there towards the end, was one of the most aggressive players on the ice every night. Like he was pissed off, David Perron was. You bring in a Jake Wallman, who brings a lot of the same kind of energy that Christian Fischer does to the room, and they make it fun. And you could tell that they were winning because they were having fun. And they need to do more of that. So maybe you bring in another guy who's like that, who's got high energy, good attitude, a goofy dude like Mo or whatever. And it's when they have fun, they're winning more. And he said that the coaching staff has brought a lot of that to the room, letting guys just form their own kind of group and their own culture and their own attitude, because we're rebuilding it from the ground up. And that starts with rebuilding the culture. And I think they're doing a really good job. But I want to get your
I
final
agree with
thoughts before we
that.
sign off. Yeah, I
Final
think it's evident.
thoughts are, I mean, enjoy the playoffs, enjoy baseball, enjoy the NFL draft if you're going to be watching that tomorrow, which I will be.
It's in
A lot of
Detroit.
Michigan.
There are going to be people going to it.
Yeah, watching it, going to it. A lot of Michigan players will probably one tomorrow, and there'll probably be a slew of them with days 2 and 3. So, if you're a Michigan fan, it's a good time to be a Michigan fan because they might break the record for the amount of NFL draft picks from one team ever. So that'll be interesting. But yeah, the playoffs have been fantastic. Really looking forward to see it ramp up even more here as the series start to carry on a little bit. As for the Wings, I mean, obviously they're eliminated. Grand Rapids starts the playoffs, right? Was it Friday night? Is that their first game?
I think the 29th is their first game, and
Oh
then
wow,
their
they
home
have some
game is
time
the
off.
first.
They have some time off, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, their
anyways,
home game
yeah,
is the first of May.
yeah, enjoy Grand Rapids and enjoy everything else because in terms of Red Wings talk, you're probably not going to hear a whole lot until after the World, and then in terms of any roster moves or anything like that, you probably won't hear anything until after the Stanley Cup final. So there's going to be a whole lot of reflecting on the season, talking about who had good seasons, who had bad seasons, and everything in between. So I'm looking forward to it, but you can follow me on Twitter at SealDog91.
Yeah, I'm going to say the same thing. The playoffs, just hope Toronto loses. It'll be hilarious. You can follow me online at Bringing the Wing. You follow the Grindline Podcast online at Grindline Pod. We give a shout out to the Hockey Podcast Network and thank them for hosting us and spreading us around. We also like to give a shout out to Vintage Detroit, where we have an exclusive t-shirt collection. If you go to vintagedetroit.com and you click on I believe it says Keep It Local link, there is a tab for us. You can see our shirts up there. Go ahead and buy some of them. I think the designs are pretty cool. There will be more coming. They're also the only place you should get your jerseys from and worked on. They're extremely low on stock right now. So go run and get the blanks. And then when a player comes up that you want to get their jersey, send it to them, tell them the name and number. They will put it on. It will come back to you just like you picked it up off the shelf. So go check out Vintage Detroit for all your Detroit jersey needs. And yeah, you can like and subscribe to us on YouTube. Head over to our channel and turn on the notifications. We'll get notified whenever an episode goes live. But that is going to do it for us tonight. So for Tyler, I am Greg. You stay classy, Hockey Town.